So a ton of reaction to the exchange we had with Tapper and Thompson, who I felt a little bad for because Thompson really did try to cover Biden's mental decline. And really, I didn't even get to mention it, but yesterday he did a great job, Thompson, for Axios of trying to follow up with Kamala Harris on all of her reversals when she ran in 2024 from Kamala Harris in 1920 and got stiff-armed. But man, he did try. But so for a large part of yesterday's interview, he was just sort of a bystander as I tried to press Jake Tapper on how he can be the one who unearths, the truth of this cover-up, of which many people think he was a part, right? So we had a back exchange over that. He ultimately wound up admitting he got it wrong. Conservative media got it right. Here's a bit of that in SOT 1.
And Alex and I are here to say that conservative media was right and conservative media was correct, and that there should be a lot of soul searching, not just among me, but among the legacy media to begin with, all of us, for how this was covered or not covered sufficiently. 100%. So, I mean, I'm not here to defend coverage that I've already acknowledged I wish I could do differently.
So, Victor, he's out there on this media tour, and now what we're seeing is media outlet after media outlet cover this book like, oh, new revelations. It appears that President Biden was in significant cognitive decline for those 4 years, and sort of taking the opportunity that the book offers to totally whitewash their own role in helping cover for him during that time. Your thoughts on it?
Well, what Jake Tapper doesn't tell you is he didn't just deny that that Joe Biden was cognitively impaired. He really was rude and attacked people who said that he was. And I remember that Laura Trump. He cut her off and he made fun of her and he said that she was basically a cruel person. He knew that it wasn't just a matter of a stutter, and he did that on numerous occasions. So that was number one. And then number two, he could have come forward any time after Joe Biden left office, or even after he was stepped down. He didn't. He only came forward really as in connection with this book. And then three, if you think about it, he can say all he wants post facto about an apology, but he's going to profit enormously off I guess it's a conspiracy or it's either incompetence that he was a central part of. And yet it's easy to say, well, we're sorry, we're doing, but he's shown nothing, I think, that suggests that he wouldn't do it again. And that's what, nobody's going to resign. Nobody's going to pay a professional price. Nobody's going to say, I'm discredited. I just need to take a leave of absence. It's when you compare all the journalists that they destroyed during the Me Too phenomenon in 2019, and then you compare it to this makes that look just like amateurish. I'm not trying to deprecate the seriousness of sexual harassment, but they went after everybody and they destroyed entire careers. And people never recovered from that. Some of them were just sort of randy. They didn't really, they weren't criminally guilty of anything. They weren't Harvey Weinstein. It was kind of a witch hunt against something. Think of Kavanaugh and others. But this was much worse because this was the president of the United States. He had all sorts of, if you look at what this president did, he destroyed U.S. deterrence with the debacle in Afghanistan. He told Putin he wouldn't react unless it was if it was a minor invasion. Mm-hmm. He distanced himself from Israel. He took the terrorist designation off of the Houthis. He empowered Hezbollah. He was responsible, I think, for 2 theater wars on his watch. He had hyperinflation. And now we're starting to say, well, maybe he didn't do any of it. The auto pen, maybe he didn't even know who he was pardoning. Maybe he didn't even know where he was. And then it gets worse, Megyn. You can say all you want if you're a doctor that after 70 men don't get PSA, but that's average American men over 70. And most of the people I know, I'm 71, they do. But the idea that the president of the United States wouldn't, nobody's going to believe that. And nobody believes that he didn't have a serious problem that was covered up. And that was part of the. So what I'm getting at is that it's a multi-layered, multifaceted effort to delude the American people for cheap political purposes. It involved his medical team, it involved his staff, it involved the surrogate people who were really running the country, and it involved the media. That cheap fake, that was a talking point for 6 months. That if anybody questioned him or they looked at a video where he was lost or wandering, they said it's cheap fake, cheap fake, cheap fake.
Yeah.
And they were relentless.
And
now, who else has apologized besides Jake Tapper?
No one, exactly. And now they're using him. It's kind of infuriating to watch them pretend like this is a real aha moment for them to read this book. Like, gee, for the first time now, I'm really seeing it. Like, I'll give you this from the Washington Post, which was all over the cheap fake narrative. I mean, I could give you headline after headline that I researched in preparing for the Jake interview. But Washington Post, trust me, was one of the worst offenders on that cheap fake narrative. Now they have an editorial board post online. If Biden was too frail for his job, voters should have been informed. Yes, they should have. By you. It's just like the New York Times. We were lied to on COVID. These newspapers of record after the fact, like, well, the government should have told us. We were lied to. Yes. And many of us knew you don't trust the government on things that may make it look bad. You press the claims. You ask others. You go around the lying liars who lie to try to bring the real story to your audience. And none of you did that because you had an agenda. You were totally on board with the whole deceptive scheme.
They were, and they knew that if they told the truth, the vindictive staff would call them up and say, "We're not going to let you. You're not going to get a question, or you're not going to be allowed to interview, or you're not going to be in the press room." And they folded like a tent. The question I would have for Jake Tapper is twofold. Would you have apologized and said that you feel humility if you hadn't written this book? In other words, you were just one of the many people who have not apologized. And two, is your apology central for this book's sales? In other words, what if you didn't apologize and you just said, I wrote a book and this is what happened. There was a conspiracy and I didn't have any part of it. Wouldn't that hurt your interviews? Would you get booked by people? Because people would say, well, he's writing a conspiracy and he's unapologetic. He was part of it. But what I'm getting at is he's only apologizing because he's in a process of making several $1 million off of something that he was culpable for. And he knows that if he didn't apologize, his interviews, his book tours, and his sales would be impaired by it. So the apology is central to give him a second chance or some type of contrition so that people will say, well, he feels bad and he was the one that kind of exposed it now. But he wouldn't apologize if he hadn't written a book, and he wouldn't apologize unless he thought it was central to the book's success.
Mm-hmm. He said he called her a few months ago, which was obviously post-debate. And, there's no question that it was while he was writing the book that he called her. No question at all.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit more where we got into why he did not cover the infirmity much earlier. SOT 2. It could only ever work if you allowed it, if the press allowed it. Some of us tried not to, and some of us were complicit.
The Biden White House did not like me. Okay, I do not have great connections with the Biden White House.
Well, clearly you have a lot of sources. You say you talked to over 200 sources for this book. So you have some election, you could have called and worked.
No, that's the point, is that they were not being honest. That's
how did the Wall Street Journal get it in June of 2024? And Jake Tapper and CNN couldn't find sources for this story then before he dropped out?
Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes did an amazing job in their reporting. And they should be heralded, and I heralded them. I had them on my show right after the debate to talk about their great reporting. But Annie Linsky,
the debate, but you did not put them on when they published that story, which was before the debate.
Correct. If we're going to do this, let's just stick to the facts here, okay? when there is a damaging
Jake,
report.
That's what I've been doing all along.
I'm talking about what you just said.
Didn't miss the biggest story of the century when it comes to presidential politics, and one of us did. The business about the Wall Street Journal reporters, and with all due respect to the two reporters on that story, I meant what I said yesterday. Everybody who read that story was like, okay, somebody's finally doing it. It was in June of 2024, Victor. We'd all been covering this at length in conservative and independent media for years by that point, for years. I mean, it's like, great, they finally took a shot and they got some Republicans to go on record in that piece, which immediately was dismissed because it was only Republicans who were on the record. But now he wants to pretend that, like, well, that was a watershed moment when finally the Wall Street Journal got a couple of people to go on record about the infirmity. It's like, oh, please, they were very, very, very late to the party. And Jake did not book them right after that report hit, which was early June. He didn't put them on at all. He put on a Democrat co-chair of the Biden campaign and then didn't vigorously cross-examine him with all the evidence, not just what was in the Journal report, but all the evidence that we had seen of Mr. Biden's infirmity. You know, like this revisionist history around like when we knew is infuriating because all of us know it was there. It was in front of our very eyes for years.
Well, CNN was a platform. Maybe not to the same degree, but he was complicit. CNN was a platform to attack the Wall Street Journal and to attack people who said that even as late as they did. And they still do it. They were doing it until the announcement of the book.
This July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition, if it happens, would not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.